two aspects, but at the same time made it what I think was a very rich and interesting session. So we had my head of unit, Olivier Bringer, moderating the plenary, and four very, 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 very good, very prepared speakers. The first one was Kerstin Null-Fockinger. I hope my German pronunciation is decent enough. She's assistant professor at University of Zurich, and she gave us the individual, the data protection aspect that we wanted to put in the session. The second speaker was Stephen Tass, who is director at Proximus. So he was there for the private sector stakeholder group. We had Francesca Bria, president of the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti in Italy, which is an institution for public funding, who obviously was representing government, so public sector. And last but not least, we had Pierre Bonny, who is Director General at AFNIC, that is the registry of .fr of the French country code top-level domain, who was there representing the technical community. As I said, it was a very interesting discussion. We mainly made it around, first of all, these two very important aspects. One side is, let's say, the technological leadership in the whole chain of the supply chain for Europe, but on the other side, how to empower European citizens, how to empower citizens in general, but also where, in which aspects, in which sector Europe needs to focus to maintain and to increase this digital sovereignty and the technological leadership in the world. Yes, so we came up with the four main messages, all of them equally important and meaningful. One is that was something that we sort of know already, which is that Europe, of course, is in the front line already, considering, I mean, if you take into consideration legal, ethical, and basic values. But this should not prevent us to still push and to still maintain, to take action to maintain digital sovereignty. The second, of course, is that, as I was mentioning, the real foundation is the digital infrastructure. So connectivity, telecommunication infrastructure, but at the same time, a balance with our regulatory framework. And at the same time, having a strong voice in international fora. Moving on, focusing not only on telecommunication infrastructure, but we also stress the importance of having a strong position for Europe on software and hardware, so not only the backbone of telecommunication, but also application, software, etc. And of course, in this, having digital skills, competencies, continue to invest and continue to innovate, it will be key. It's key. We do know that, how to say, that the power of Europe, or Europe is very resourceful when it comes to small and medium enterprises. So we also noticed at the end, this last message, that our large companies should be looking more into regional SMEs, but also have a stronger link with university and research center, because there is where the real innovation is happening in Europe. With this said, this was pretty much the conclusion of our session. For future points, what still needs to be answered, I think is more on verify somehow, maybe not immediately, but in few years, if this is really happening, and also to see what really the COVID-19 crisis, what real impact had in this, because it was also highlighted during the session that, of course, the COVID-19 crisis can be at the same time an opportunity to increase European digital sovereignty. This is Sandra.
Thank you very much, Valentina. By the way, we will give some space for questions right after all the 4 presentations. But without further delay, let me go to the next presenter, which is Michael Odja for the plenary on environmental sustainability, the one that we will continue an informal discussion after this open forum. So Michael, I will also share my screen and give the floor to you.
Well, thank you, Sandra. Hi, everyone. And it's really interesting how I think I'd broken down what I'm going to say into different things, but already there's a question in the chat about 5G and energy. And I think that this is a really good example of just why incorporating sustainability kind of discussions into our work is so incredibly important, because there are all kinds of technologies that are converging with both policy, in this case within the European Union, and as well as with new developments where we don't necessarily know, or if we do know, we don't necessarily communicate how all of these elements kind of come together. So that is very much one of that is essentially why we wanted to do this plenary. The whole point was so that we could examine political developments, kind of compare that with what's going on the ground with digital technology, in the context of its energy use, its mineral, its material footprint and whatnot, with the idea that we're saying, hey, this is a topic that to many people may seem tertiary. It might seem kind of on the periphery, but the fact is, especially as digitization increases around the world, as well as intersects with things like development, where we want to expand development, we want to expand economic growth, we want to do all those kinds of things, but then there's not necessarily any, there's not necessarily a lot of considerations for how that's ultimately impacting digital technologies and the devices and the hardware, and kind of how we use these things and its impact on the environment, as well as human rights. So it's this interesting nexus between the three. So what we did was we actually kind of situating this discussion within the context of the European Green Deal and multiple roadmaps and policy papers that came out from the EU, including the digital strategy, shaping Europe's digital future, its strategy on data, the circular economy action plan, all of which is relevant to ICTs. We're kind of situated our plenary within these major policy frameworks, and really wanted to know how we can transform some of our discussions, but also how we can leverage our multi-stakeholder community in order to really generate concrete policy actions. And we kind of focused on a few key points of this. And the one is, how can all stakeholders work together to accelerate the transition to both the circular economy as well as improving the environmental sustainability of internet-connected technologies? That ranges really from infrastructure and design and manufacture all the way to services and consumption. Then we wanted to really give a little primer on how environmental sustainability is connected to internet governance, why this is so important, which I think I've already made that clear in my opening remarks, and what regulatory frameworks we really should be considering, as well as which actors we need to be engaging with going forward. I mean, this is something I cannot stress enough, is that something as broad as environmental sustainability and digitization, this nexus, it's something that involves so many different actors working across the field, that multi-stakeholder governance is essentially the only way for us to actually make a meaningful impact here, because it is so broad and it is so interconnected. Excuse me. So because of that, we really, it's like we are sitting on this hotbed of a laboratory of sorts, of potential, and really meaningful kinds of policy discussions that we could have that are based on what we already have to work with in terms of our governance structures. So with that in mind, we sorry, I'm not sick. I just happen to have a runny nose all of a sudden. I'm so sorry. Just one moment. Just let me just mute myself. I just like to think that that's a little bit more, I don't know, kind. But we had really wonderful speakers that we pulled from across the Union and from wider Europe, trying to give a bit of context to these discussions. Our key participants included Beat Esterman from the University of Applied Sciences in Bern. Chris Adams, who is the founder of Climate Action Tech and the Green Web Foundation. David Cormand, who is an MEP for the Greens. He actually gave an opening video kind of contextualizing all of this within the context of European policy. Emma Fryer joined us from Tech UK. Ilias Iacovidis from DG Connect was also someone who joined, giving a perspective from the EC. We had a youth perspective via Lea Elsemüller from the Green Youth in Germany. And lastly, but definitely not least, we have Olivier Vergenst from Green IT Belgium, who was joining. And what we were trying to do is we were trying to combine technical, policy, and in many ways advocacy approaches all together. And when I say we, I mean my fabulous co-host Alexandra Lutz and I, co-moderator, excuse me. And ultimately, throughout this 1 hour, first of all, we really appreciated how many incredible questions we received from so many people in the community. And your support meant the world to us. Forgive me for getting a bit personal as opposed to just, broadcasting. But the fact is that, I have been working on this topic for years. So many people have been working on this topic for years, and it has largely been relegated, like I said, to the periphery. And the fact that so many people were supportive of this, understanding of it, asking questions, really making it, making us feel supported and validated, it really means a lot. So thank you to the EuroDIG community for all of your efforts in this. And due to that, to this fantastic conversation that we had and this great discussion, we didn't have enough time for all the questions. That's how wonderful you all are. We came to 6 key messages. One is that a standard methodology and indicators are necessary to assess and monitor the environmental and social impact of digital technologies. So in other words, we want to make sure that we're at the regulatory design levels, et cetera. We want to make sure that we need to make sure that the numbers, the studies, the facts basically are there in order to really facilitate evidence-based decision-making. Another one is that internet governance should include sustainability at its core. This is something that unfortunately we're now doing retroactively. We're trying to say, well, how can we make systems and networks more sustainable? This is something we should have been doing 20 years ago, if not more. But because of that, we need to now work redouble our efforts. There were 4 other major ones that came out. I'll try to be very brief. I don't want to go over my time, apologies. We need to really think about material efficiency, not just energy use. Energy use in general is becoming more efficient. And of course, renewables are much more cost effective now. So our focus should not just be on energy, but it should really especially be on a more holistic view of how all of these technologies are created and where their minerals are mined, how they're recycled, how can we contribute to a circular economy. And of course, green power is a huge part of that. I don't want to minimize the importance of advocating for and really creating policies that emphasize more greener power mechanisms. And then we really need to also think about how to share environmental data, things like that, because there's 2 sides to this. One is the sustainability of ICTs, but also how ICTs are an enabler of development. But at the same time, in order to do that, we need certain kinds of data. We need to promote efficiency and whatnot. And so we have to look at it very, like I said, holistically. And lastly, we also need to take a sense of take stock in sense of how we're ensuring corporate accountability. How are we essentially getting all stakeholders to take this and think about it in a deeper and more meaningful way. So there's a lot that we need to do going forward. We really appreciate EuroDIG support, and we will continue to focus on these things, especially as new developments arise in the coming months. I think I could speak for everybody though when I say that we're just trying to take it one day at a time at the moment, one conference at a time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Michael, and even under your conditions to move forward. As I said already, we will continue a discussion on this topic, not on the content, but how are we going to implement it into a process towards the next EuroDIG cycle. But one thing I would like to mention, why I also believe this topic is so important. I mean, when we're looking at the EU now, or the European Union, Mrs. von der Leyen, she always mentioned the importance of the Green Deal. That's kind of a keyword. And she is very much promoting the digital development. I think really the European Union in particular must think those two issues together. We will only be successful if one influences the other, and if we look at it as a holistic approach and not as two separate things to be done. And I hope that we at EuroDIG can contribute to that development, that we try to have a more holistic approach between environmental aspects and the digitization of our society. Our next plenary and the last plenary will be represented by Markus Kummenauer. Unfortunately, he cannot be with us because he's taking care of a new colleague at work, but he did send a video that I would like to share with you, and I hope that works now. Okay. This is Marcel.
There is no sound.
Yes, no sound.
There's no sound. Oh.
If Sandra, you should be able, when you share your screen, to also click a box that says share computer audio. So that might be
okay.
A solution.
Für einen Videoclip den Computer. Ton, ja, hier ist es. Okay, then let me go back a little bit.
Morning, good afternoon, good evening to all listeners at home, in the office, or from wherever you listen. This IGF is a very special one. This is the first IGF that is not held on site, but on the internet, which we are dealing with so extensively for this occasion. My name is Marcel Kummenauer, and together with Mary Bagadazarian, I had the great pleasure to be the co-focal point for the EuroDIG plenary European Digital Economy and COVID-19 Pandemic, Current State of Affairs, Risks and Opportunities. This session was all about the unique state of affairs for European digital economy enforcement created by COVID-19. On the one hand, it has had a catalyzing effect on the digitization of most European economies. On the other hand, it caused restrictions on various digital as well as human rights. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, we had the opportunity to have a very lively, also virtual discussion on the topic together with Audrey Plonk from the OECD, Patrick Panix from the Council of Europe, Caterina Bortolini from ADNO, and Stephen Tyler from Area Science Park, an Italian startup accelerator, as well as our wonderful audience. Together, we talked about the numerous acute developments that the pandemic has brought and asked ourselves whether they will persist after the pandemic and are ushering in a fundamental digital paradigm shift. Such a paradigm shift should be evaluated based on scientific findings with multiple stakeholders. We need to think about the type of sustainable society that we want to create and what role technology will play in this society. But we did not only deal with long-term issues. We also talked about how we can master the current situation with the use of science, solidarity, and mutual support. Therefore, we need to tackle, among other things, the gap of the digital divide. Stakeholders need a forward-looking approach that promotes investment as well as co-investment. At the same time, we need to invest in the upskilling on ICT matters in order to facilitate improvements. Those are all major challenges that we can only face together. The more important it is to maintain a dialogue on these issues. But how are we going to do that? The corona pandemic has created a certain dynamic in the economic and academic environment which makes it necessary to always assess the current situation both retrospectively and with a forward-looking approach. Forums such as the IGF are a good platform on which the pressing societal questions can be identified in a multi-stakeholder approach, and on which expert groups can subsequently work. We're looking forward to numerous exciting discussions and to new approaches to solutions that will help us all to move forward. Stay safe and take care. Best regards from Frankfurt, Germany, as well as from the whole EuroDIG Plenary 3 org team, spread over whole Europe. Take care.
So this was Marcel, and as I said already, this topic took over the part of the opening plenary because of the pandemic. But even more importantly, I would like to underline that Marcel and Mary are a very good example for how youth participation is integrated into the EuroDIG, because both of them found their way to internet governance through the EuroDIG program. Mary was, for instance, also on the program committee for this year's EuroDIG, and that's actually how it works at EuroDIG. If you stay engaged, they were able to organize this important plenary, and basically there is no limit for any youth participant to get involved. And I think these both are very good example that it really works, our effort. Talking about youth, we have some former youth diggers and members of the program committee here. Elisabeth Schauermann, who is also an integral part of the EuroDIG Secretariat, is also taking care of the coordination of the youth program. And she agreed to quickly share the youth messages that the youth diggers produced this year. Fortunately, a youth dig could take place, unfortunately, only as an online event. Elisabeth, I share the screen and give you the floor.
Thank you, Sandra. As was just said, the EuroDIG program has a long-standing tradition now, and it has produced outcomes every year. It has also given people the opportunity to find their way into EuroDIG. And so we really see it as a capacity building program, as an outreach program. The process is a bit different always, also was this year. So as opposed to having outcomes and messages out of every session we do, we rather have sessions on different topics. For example, this year we looked into media and content fact-checking, we looked into human rights, and how to create change on the internet through activism and other ways. And then what we do is we kind of look into, we let the participants decide what policy points they want to tackle. They don't have to necessarily be in a straight line, so to speak, with the sessions that we did. And in this kind of bottom-up process, this year the participants came up with 4 major points that then have sub-points, as you see. I've also posted the link to the chat. So we talked about data protection and children's safety. The participants were looking into dark patterns, the role of different stakeholders in child protection online, for example, parents, educational institutions, but also legislation. Then they looked into internet access and inclusion, so kind of deliberating where in the European region we were still seeing a digital divide, in what ways, and then also tackling digital literacy and how to navigate disinformation online. The third group focused more on blockchain and innovation and how those technologies can be used in a meaningful way that is in line with our policy goals. And then the fourth group also looked into what we heard kind of fed into one of the plenaries, greening the internet, and how environmental sustainability has to have a role in policy discussions around internet governance. And then what we do, or what we try to encourage, is that our participants take the messages that generated out of the group and out of their knowledge and expertise, and really bring them into the discussions at EuroDIG, make their voices heard, and kind of give themselves an opportunity to speak up, because sometimes, especially for newcomers, and if they're youth and they're not affiliated with any major organization, it can be hard to take the floor. So this is also an opportunity and an exercise to actively participate in EuroDIG, and then in other fora that come after, but also find a way around EuroDIG, as Sandra said, to stay more engaged, take different roles. And yeah, so this has also happened this year. We're very grateful that it worked out. Usually we like to do a 2 or 3 day pre-event right before EuroDIG starts. This year we moved to online and spread it over several weeks with shorter sessions. And we will see how it goes next year. I hope that we can bring young people together again, but we will see how that goes.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. And with regard to the youth messages, you might see that they are becoming more and more sustainable every year. And I would in particular like to thank Nadja, who's also on the call, because she conducted the drafting of the messages, which was truly a challenge through online medias only, but we started last year. Maybe Nadja, you would say just a very few words about the methodology that you introduced to the youngsters. Sorry to put you on the spot right away.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. We use a methodology called Syntegration, and Syntegration is based on the concept of systems thinking. So we use systems method to optimize the manner in which individuals communicate with each other, which includes both active thinking, so being able to speak and active participation, and passive participation, so having time to reflect and contribute to discussions at different times. So when we approach the topics, people have different manners to optimize their personal capacity to participate in the discussions. Not everyone is capable of thinking immediately of an idea and contributing that to the conversation. Some people need time to reflect or listen to other ideas before they can build on those. Some people are people that present. And we bring all these communications methods together in one very intense session to try and build on the knowledge that is in EuroDIG and participate in the discussions as effectively as possible. So we hope to be able to continue doing that.
I hope so too, and I hope that you will be able to do so at the nice Adriatico coast. The rooms are blocked already, so keep fingers crossed that we can really get to Trieste. Okay, basically we are through the messages of plenary and youth, and I would like to invite if anyone has a general question on these messages, to raise the question now. I see some discussion took place already in the chat about the respective topic that were presented, but any other issues that anyone would like to raise or ask the presenters? Then raise your hand and with a raise hand function, or just speak up. Okay, I see there are no questions on this. Then let me go over to our other topic of our session, which is how can these messages that we just heard can become more influential, and how can we make them really more relevant? Of course, there are some first ideas to think of. During this IGF, you will potentially join multiple sessions on certain topics that you have a special interest in. And of course, the easiest way to bring that up to a broader community, if you feed in the content and the messages of the respective session at EuroDIG to the global debate. That's an easy task, and I think everyone can do this and should also do this, and potentially also mention that these ideas that you might share came out of a European process that is feeding into the global process. A second point is, of course, to do it at work. I think the most important advantage of an IGF, a national, regional, or global, is that you start thinking about certain things, that you get to know the perspective of another person, and that might influence your thinking and your idea as well. And of course, then later on also influence the decisions you take at work. So I think everyone will take it back to work, and it will influence the work, albeit this is a process that you cannot really measure. I mean, we are not able to, unfortunately, we are not able to look what you're doing and how this was influenced by EuroDIG, but I'm very sure that this has a huge effect. And the third methodology of sharing the messages is, of course, that you communicate in your network, that you share the messages, the wiki, the brochure that you can download on our website, and all these communication materials that we provide, that you share that with your community. But we have the feeling, and I think this is also a huge issue among the broader internet governance community, that we don't get really through to the decision takers and decision makers. We invest huge efforts, meanwhile, to involve parliamentarians in IGFs and regional and national forums, because they are the ones that do the legislation. But still, we also need to reach the business sector when they invest into new products, how these new products should be designed so that they allow for good governance. And I would like to open up a discussion now on this topic, on how we can make these messages more influential. And you might know that there is a working group being formed, the working group on the IGF strengthening and strategy, which goes very much into the direction of producing tangible outcomes, which are messages in a way. And Concinetta Casa, she is MARC member, and she's also, together with Henriette Esterhusen, co-chair of this working group. And Concinetta agreed to give us an update on the work of this working group, and I will take her intervention then and open the floor for everyone else to jump on it and to come up with ideas on how to improve our outcomes, how to make them more visible, and in this respect also help the IGF Plus to evolve. Concinetta, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks Sandra for giving me the floor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so thanks a lot. So I would like to share, first of all, some idea that I've brought the activation of the MAG working group on IGF strength and strategy. The purpose of this working group is to develop a proposal of implementable action in the short and medium terms on how to strengthen the IGF, and also on how to position the IGF in the evolution of the digital cooperation landscape. So the working group actually had an important discussion and reflection based on two main folds. On one side, it reflects on the mandate as outlined in the IGF Tunis agenda, and try to understand how the IGF can best fulfill this mandate. Also because it's an important moment, because the IGF is halfway through the 10-year renew WSIS +10 mandate. And also the working group had a broader discussion on digital cooperation, considering the UN Secretary General Roadmap for Digital Cooperation, as the roadmap identifies some priority topics to improve the IGF, and also had an important discussion on the option paper, the document that has been delivered by the co-champions on September, which suggests concrete options and indication on the future of the global digital cooperation. So let me mention the main output that the working group has delivered so far. First of all, the working group has issued on September the response document to the option paper. The document is available on the website. Then there was also another important outcome related to the 93A paragraph of the roadmap for digital cooperation that is asking for a new model to operationalize the multi-stakeholder high-level body. The working group has produced three approaches on this regard. Then we also have delivered, we are just drafting a paper on the outcomes, and also we tried also to discuss on starting from the review works that the MAG has done on the IGF improvements, try to select some priority to focus on the previous recommendation. You know, there are several recommendations that have been issued on IGF retreat, on also on Net Mundial and so on. So we did a selection process that was led from some people from the working group, try to select the priority. And then also a lot of online discussion have been held on IGF participation, data language, on NRIs, on DC, dynamic coalition, the best practice forum, and so on. So I want just to point out on the first document that I referred, the response document to the option paper, just to point out the main elements that have been indicated in this document. And I want also say that this document has been also formally sent to the co-champion, so we are just waiting for feedback. So it's important in this document, as pointed out, the importance to work on the current IGF in a gradual way and try to work and to upgrade the strengths of the IGF, like the NRIs, the BPF, and DC. Those are the important elements of IGF. So we should work on these elements, try to improve them, but in a gradual way. And also, it has been pointed out the importance to connect more the IGF with existing fora, but also it's important to work on how to improve communication between IGF and also the decision-making process. And in this process is important, the cooperation accelerator as intended as a set of functions that are distributed on these strengths of the IGF. But anyway, I don't want to take my speech too long, as the documents with also which includes the free approach of the multi-stakeholder high-level body, is available on the website, so you can just go and see. So that's all from my side. Thanks a lot, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Titi. And Titi mentioned the website, so I posted also the link in the chat, so you can access the site that I just shared on the screen directly and find the response to the option paper on further digital cooperation. And with this, I would like to open the floor. I see that Thomas started already a discussion in the chat, so please raise your hand if you would like to speak or would like to respond. Or just speak up. Thomas, you are first.
Thank you. Just to give people time, I think there are some lower and some higher hanging fruits. The lowest hanging fruit is probably the one that, and unfortunately there are not that many governmental reps now here on this in the session. But if we all, no matter which stakeholder we are, if we go to thematic meetings, be it on green IT or on 5G or on social media, that we take the messages with us and we refer to their respective messages in these meetings so that people know about them and feed them into the discussion. And in particular, the ones that organize meetings, like for instance, the European Commission, when they organize thematic meetings, or the presidencies when they organize thematic meetings. But every one of us, if we just have them at hand and feed them in, it's just something you need to think about, and maybe we need to remind people that's one of the lower hanging fruits. And the same goes, of course, for the IGF meetings this week. So whenever a topic is discussed where we have messages, somebody should feed them in. That's one of the first things that come to my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Anyone else?
Okay, Sandra, if I can jump in, I think it's important this message should be spread also through the NRIs. It's important, I mean, try to spread through NRI, but also to reach decision making at the NRI, a local level. I think it's an important point to go forward with a common political objective on some issues and on some thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Titi. I mean, about contributing to a global process and to a broader process, we had also the process on digital cooperation that was chaired by Mark Cavell and spun over a year, 2019, 2020. So we have some experience with this kind of intersessional work and sharing messages involving a network. Mark, are you prepared to give an overview on how this process worked and what impact we could create with our work?
Yes, thank you, Sandra, and hello, everybody. Yes, if you just recall very quickly, the high-level panel's report, The Age of Digital Interdependence, was published at the time of the EuroDIG event in The Hague. And so we thought, amongst the EuroDIG experts engaged and following the high-level panel work and the outputs, that it would be important for the European community to engage with that process, to examine the report's recommendations and respond to it. So we thought EuroDIG should launch a consultation process based on a kind of questionnaire, picking out some of the key elements of the report and seeking stakeholders' reactions to that. And I think it was a very successful exercise. We received, what was it, about 25 to 30 responses from the European institutions, Commission, Council of Europe and others, from individual stakeholders, from NGOs with a large European membership, and from I think 2 or 3 national IGFs in Europe. I think it was difficult for some of the IGFs in Europe, the national ones, to enact a process, if you like, to collect views from local communities to feed back in response to our consultation. It's an understandable challenge, but I think it was broadly successful, and I think it augurs well for EuroDIG to undertake intersessional activity like that, to be agile and responsive to issues that are quickly surfacing, issues that are maturing, that are making progress, and where there are opportunities to react to and to engage. So the EuroDIG, the results of the EuroDIG consultation, well, you can see them on the EuroDIG website, and there are some messages in the 2020 messages relating to the digital cooperation. I think on about page 46 or so. If you look through, you'll find them there. All based from the consultation, the intersessional consultation we undertook, and we were able to present those, of course, to the IGF in Berlin, and also contribute to the IGF NRI task force consultations. So I think the European community through EuroDIG was able to react quickly for a lot of very good views, responses, ideas, reactions to be communicated. And of course, the process hasn't stopped. Konstantina mentioned the current situation with the working group of the MAG examining the options paper, and we can expect further opportunities to engage when the process for appointing the Secretary General's Tech Envoy. Who should that be? What would be the basis for that appointment be? Hopefully there will be the opportunity for stakeholders to contribute to the process of an appointment, and also the high-level board proposal for the IGF. Hopefully EuroDIG community would have the opportunity to contribute to how that board should be established, what kind of functions it would have in hopefully primarily in disseminating outcomes and so on. But a lot of this has to be worked out, and I would hope we have the opportunity as the EuroDIG community to contribute to decisions about that and other decisions on the way forward that Konstantin touched on as well. So those are my thoughts. I'd be interested to hear the reactions of others. I hope national IGFs within the European geographical area would be able to assist EuroDIG, and we coordinate in contributing views and proposals and comments to take forward the recommendations and proposals of the UN digital cooperation process. I hope that's helpful, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, and also thank you again for driving this process forward. You were really essential over a year to make this meaningful contribution, and it was just mentioned in the chat that active participation was essential to the successful outcome of the overall process. So I think we really made an impact here in terms of driving this process forward. But the question is, what comes next? At the moment, on this level, there's not much to do. We are in a waiting position, everyone, regards to what is the architecture and who is the technology envoy. But we need to move forward and have to find another way of supporting the IGF strengthening process. And I encourage, again, everyone, just raise your hand if you have ideas. I would really like to use this forum to get ideas on what can the Secretariat, what can the community do next in order to create an impact and participate meaningful. Raise your hand using the raise hand function, or just speak up if you wish. Nadja, you have the floor.
Hello. I've noticed that we are looking a lot externally, like outwards, so reaching out to the communities, but I also would like to look a little bit internally. With the Youth Coalition on Internet Governance, a few years ago, I organized an event in Brussels for young professionals who are interested in internet governance and why they're not participating. And one of the ways that the messages are not reaching them is that those of them who do want to participate, that EuroDIG and the IGF are being leveraged as a bonus or a promotion. So, or if you do good work, then you can participate in the event. They're not allowed to watch the sessions while they're at work, so they can only attend the sessions, or they have to watch it afterwards in their own time. So they're not having any discussions internally about what the EuroDIG messages are and how it impacts their work. And they are not being encouraged to reach out to EuroDIG or to network with these people. And I think that's a really missed opportunity, that we have such a rich environment in which some of the people who are on like incoming levels, like young professionals, that are not allowed or don't find the capacity or don't understand how to become part of the network unless they have multiple hats. So if you then as a young person decide, oh, I'm going to become a member of the Youth Coalition Internet Governance, or I'm going to become a member of ISOC, or I'm going to become a member of something else, then I have a different hat to be able to participate, because they're not allowed to use their work name. They're not allowed to use to network. And I think that if we are capable of having these meaningful conversations in our workplace and allowing individuals like young people to have the time to watch EuroDIG sessions live and participate in the discussions, that when Thomas was talking about being able to attend other sessions and spreading the message, we as a community are much richer, and also your company would, or your organization would be much richer in being able to spread the information that now only seemingly a part of an organization is facing. Sorry, I speak faster than I actually breathe.
Thank you, Nadja. Sorry, I had to type. I just realized I didn't mute myself. I hope it wasn't too disturbing. Anyone else would like to continue on what Nadja just said? Looking into the chat. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak up. This is a discussion for all of us, and we are keen to hear how we can move forward. It's too early for everyone. Thomas, I remember you put some quite extensive opinion already in the chat. You need to mute yourself, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether I need to raise hand first or just unmute myself. So, well, basically, I already said what I wrote in the chat, and there's a few follow-ups, and I think there's in the end there are a number of good ideas that have been raised. Maybe to look forward, we could collect them and then somehow share it with all the participants in EuroDIG, encourage them to use the message in their own fields where they work, in their meetings where they go, share them as Nadja has said in their institutions. So in the end, it's we are the cheapest multipliers is ourselves. Let's put it that way. So whatever we do, it will help, and the more we encourage others to do the same, that will help. And that goes in all directions. On national level, bring it in the IGF, bring it in all institutions where things are discussed. So that's my takeaway. But maybe it would be good to have a list of things to do, basically, that we encourage everybody to do that may help.
Thanks, Thomas. With regard how we can contribute to any kind of process that goes into a direction of intersessional work, I would like to refer to the session that just follows this part after a 30 minutes break. I understand that this room will stay open and we can come back to this room. I will just stay in the room, switch off my camera for 30 minutes. And this might be also an opportunity to discuss the next step of intersessional work. But now I see we have two hands raised, Mark and Livia. And if Mark, if you're okay, I would give Livia the floor first because she hasn't spoken yet. Is that okay with you?
Of course, yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Sandra, and hello, everybody. Actually, I was just wanted to say something similar that you just pointed out, that regarding the intersessional work, actually, because I really think that intersessional work is really important for EuroDIG, so that we are actually not just moving from one event to the other. And I think the whole process that Mark coordinated with regards to the high-level panel on digital cooperation, that was a great example for intersessional work done by EuroDIG. And perhaps we can somehow find a new topic for a new intersessional work, and that's maybe something that we can discuss in the next session in the brainstorming on environment, because maybe the interlinkages between environment and digitization could become a topic for a new intersessional work by EuroDIG. So I'm really looking forward to the brainstorming session that will start in half an hour. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Livia. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Sandra. The only additional point, it's more a matter of underlining it, I think, is that a lot of the discussions on the follow-up to the high-level panel's report and the way forward for the roadmap and so on have underlined the contribution, the greater contribution that the national and regional IGFs can make to the development of global IGF outcomes. So messages from EuroDIG and other regional and national fora, I think, we have to look at how to integrate our outputs with the development of outputs from the global IGF, because we provide the reach from the global forum to local communities, to communities at the national level, and it's a two-way process. We can cascade downwards, but also submit upwards to the global processes directly from local communities in finessing or ensuring that the outcomes from the global process are going to match expectations of stakeholders and are going to be directed to the right people, the decision takers that we've been talking about back in national and at the local level. So we have to think about it in those sort of big picture terms, I think, in terms of what use are made of our messages and how we communicate them and so on. Yep, thank you.
I see in the chat that there's a lot of support for this intersessional work. And I also see that we have now some hands raised, Sebastian Bachelet and then Julia Wollmann. Sebastian, you go first.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Sebastian Bachelet, chair of Euralo and ISOC France, and so on. I just wanted to raise two issues. The first one is that how we can put together the discussion about sovereignty and multi-stakeholder. I see some divergence here, and I think that the European needs to have in-depth discussion on that and follow on, because I feel that we are going more and more into regulation, sovereignty, and less to multi-stakeholder, except in fora like EuroDIG. And my second point is that how to deal with connection with the local national IGF, and maybe the way, I guess, could be to have some type of liaison because if not, there will not be too much coordination or exchanges. And one thing I will try to do is to take the points going out from EuroDIG to see how it could fit within the French IGF here. That's the French IGF will be organized, started last week, and will be organized now with one event each month during the next 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that information, Sebastian. I saw something about the French IGF already, but wasn't aware that this is an ongoing process, which is a new format. Very interesting. Julia, you have raised your hand, and I think we are also on top of the hour, and you will be the last speaker. Nice to see you, Julia.
Nice to see you. Well, I'm Julia Vollmann. I'm from the Danish Business Authority, also organizing the Danish IGFs for many years. I would just say that I agree with what Livia said, and also with what many others and Mark Carvel just said as well. I think maybe the success of the EuroDIG or the European participation in the UN process has exactly been that we have been focusing on one topic and has started from the beginning in framing how we wanted this to be. And I think in that sense also the strong leadership that we took on this agenda point, and really the efforts going into assembling comments and from all stakeholders has been crucial in having the European view fed into the process, and also in I think the successful outcome that we are in now. And also so I think we need to continue on this path. Yeah, that's and maybe also going forward, if I think there should be a focus also on like a few topics from the European side. I think if we just take all the issues or workshops or plenary that we discuss, I think this will be too diffuse. Maybe I think focusing on a few like important topics that will help, I think, getting our messages across, and we need to start early also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia. And I think you opened up already a good discussion for our subsequent informal session. And then I would like to hint you to another informal gathering that we will have at the end of the IGF on the 16th of November at 11:20 UTC, so around noon time in European, Central European time. Maybe you have the time to convene again and reflect on the IGF, and possibly we have even more ideas on what our next steps are, also in the light of the pandemic. And I understand this room will stay open now. I will switch off my audio and my video, but I will stay connected. And we will be back here in 30 minutes for the informal gathering. And with this, I would like to thank everyone for the active contribution. It was a good meeting. I was happy to see so many people joining, and also people that are not from the usual EuroDIG community crowd. I hope we could reach out to some new people to get involved. And with this, I would like to adjourn this open forum and hope to reconvene informally with you in 30 minutes from now. Thank you very much.